Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we have a very special tour planned through an incredible biblical city, the city of Jericho. We are going to visit the Mount of Temptation, the Tree of Ezekiel, and also the walls from the times of Joshua. So if you are ready, let's get started. Let's start by telling where we are. We are in the Judean desert, 9.32 miles from the Dead Sea and only 6.21 miles from the border with Jordan. The city of Jericho, it has some records. One of the records is for being the lowest city in the world. We are 284 yards, 3 feet 4 inches below sea level, and this is also the oldest city in the world that still exists. And that's why the city of Jericho has a lot of history, over 10,000 years of history to be exact. And many biblical passages also take place here in the city. And what does the name of the city mean? Jericho in Hebrew is pronounced Jericho, and it can mean either the fragrant city or the city of the moon, since in Hebrew, Yarek means moon. We have arrived at Tel El Sultan, also known as Tel Jericho. What is Tel? Tel is a word used in both Arabic and Hebrew to describe an archaeological hill. Yes, we have this concept here because of the many archaeological sites we have. How does this happen? Think that we now have a city like the city of Jericho, mostly built in stone. And the city is now going to be destroyed, whether by war or by an earthquake. And the stones will be piled up. The next people to come and rebuild the city, they can either clear the ground or build on top of it, of archaeological remains, since the city of Jericho in biblical times was to build on top of it. So the city is being built one on top of the other and raising the level of the city, literally building hills of archaeological remains. And that's why we have here an entire hill of archaeological remains, since the city of Jericho was destroyed and rebuilt more than 20 times, and so this is precisely the oldest part of the city of Jericho. But when we get here at the excavations of Jericho, what everyone wants to see are the walls from the times of Joshua. But let's go back a bit in history to understand which walls we are talking about. The people of Israel were slaves in Egypt and then, now after 440 years, the people could finally have freedom, and the people of Israel will wander in the desert for 40 years. This desert today is where Jordan is. We can see it right here in the background, these mountains that are already part of Jordan. And then, now after 440 years, the people could finally enter the land of Israel and settle here near the region of Gilgal. And now they have a very difficult mission to come and reconquer the land of Israel city after city. Think that during these 440 years, the land will not remain empty, but other peoples will live here. These are Canaanite peoples. And the first city to be reconquered will be the city of Jericho, which has a big obstacle, a gigantic wall. And now we are going to see what are probably remains of that same wall. And so here behind us we can see the wall, or rather the walls of Jericho. We are seeing here a colossal double wall. At its highest point, it had a height of 39.37 feet. Now, we have a big problem in Jericho that here not enough archaeological excavations have been done. Not all the excavations that have been done are serious, and there is also a lot of political influence here in the excavations. So we don't have all the information yet to put together the puzzle. But let's see what we do know from these excavations, and especially about this wall. And how will the reconquest work? Joshua sends 2 spies to come and look at the city of Jericho. These spies hide in the house of Rahab, a prostitute. And when the king of Jericho hears that there are spies from the people of Israel, he sends for them. So the spies have to hide and they sneak out of Rahab's house. She then let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the city wall and she lived on the wall. And how did this double wall work? We have a wall here on one side, another wall here, and that's why the biblical narrative of that time makes a lot of sense. Now, who would want to live literally in the walls? The people who didn't have money. It's the cheapest area of the city. Since you are less protected, you are literally exposed halfway out of the city. Destruction of the city fits with the biblical narrative. When Rahab says that her family lived in the wall, she probably refers to a wall like this, if not this very one. There are archaeologists who believe that this is the very wall from the times of Joshua, and we will see how this wall and the destruction of the city fit with the biblical narrative. When they dug here and found this destroyed wall, there is a black line because it was burned. But this from Joshua, when we know that the people of Israel will circle the walls 7 times, blow the trumpets, and the walls will fall. And on top of this destruction, a layer of ashes was found because the city was burned. We can clearly see a black line here below because the city was burned. But food, objects, a lot of things were found. And this wasn't just a city being conquered, it was subsequently burned. This indicates to us the first thing, that the destruction was not an earthquake, but rather a war. But when the burned city was found, things were searched for in these ashes before it was looted. And this fits well with it being a common thing for the time, because then came the iron, and that's it. And so the city was the first thing they were going to do, to plunder the city, then it's conquer, plunder, and only then the city would be burned. And here, no, the city was destroyed and burned before it was plundered. This fits well with the biblical description because Joshua says that one will take from city to city the gold, the silver, the metals, and the iron, and that's it. And that's why the city was burned with everything inside, and that's why the jars that were found here inside, full of food, mainly barley, are a very important archaeological indication. And also because they conquer the city of Jericho, probably in the spring, and they are here celebrating the spring festival, and then they come and conquer the city of Jericho, probably in the spring. And we know that when the people of Israel were here in the camps of Gilgal, they celebrate the Jewish Passover, which is also known as the Spring Festival. That is, they are here celebrating the Spring Festival, and then they come and conquer the city of Jericho, probably in the spring, and we know that this city was also destroyed in the spring. And not only will the walls of the city of Jericho fall, as the city will be destroyed and burned, but not enough with all this, Joshua will curse the city in Joshua 6:26, and he says that every person who tries to rebuild Jericho will pay a very high price, and he will pay the price in his firstborn son, also of his youngest son. And therefore, here in the archaeological excavations, a wall and a destroyed city were found, a layer of abandonment. What does this mean? If the city is not inhabited, the earth will accumulate on top of it, so we have some centuries of abandonment. And then on top we see that the city will indeed be rebuilt. It will be rebuilt by Hiel. And as Joshua predicted, he will pay the price of 2 of his sons. We see here more archaeological excavations, and they are deeper than the wall excavations we saw just now. What does this mean? Does it mean they are older? Because when we talked about the city is destroyed and rebuilt, rebuilt and rebuilt. That is, the deeper, the older the city. And this tower that we are seeing here, folks, this circular tower, it is one of the first buildings of the city with 6,500 years of history. So for Joshua, this is the grandeur of this city, one of the first cities in the world, the oldest city that still exists. And we see here this colossal construction of ours. And one of the ways Jericho takes my breath away is to think about one thing. When Joshua and the people of Israel arrive here in this place, the city already had at that time more than 6,500 years of history. So for Joshua, this was already a millennial city. And for us today, of course, even more history is buried here. And we hope that the archaeological excavations do continue and that we can find more treasures that come out of these excavations. So look at the amazing place we are. We see here in the background the city of Jericho. We can also see the mountains that today are Jordan. But I want to turn around with you to the other side, because right there we see a mountain. Can you see that mountain that has a construction on top? That mountain is called the Mount of Temptation, and that's where we're going now. So come with me. We're going to ascend the Mount of Temptation using a cable car that's 361 yards long, which is much easier than climbing all that way on foot. And we also have a beautiful view from up here. For instance, we're now looking at Tel Jericho, where we were just a few minutes ago. From up here, we can also see banana plantations and date palms. And because of the date palms, the city is precisely known in the Bible as the City of Palms. Here at the end of the cable car line, we have a beautiful view of the city of Jericho. However, we came on a special day. We came on a sandstorm day. So the visibility is a bit strange, a bit different. That's why it seems like there's a fog over it. This really is a sandstorm. There are days when it's much more intense. There are days when you can't see anything here. So today we can see some things. What we see very clearly are the mountains of Jordan that we mentioned before. But one of these mountains, a little further north from here, is Mount Nebo. It's the mountain where Moses will pass away. That is, Moses will lead the people of Israel from Egypt through the 40 years of the desert, but he will pass away before entering the land of Israel. So in these mountains is where Moses will look at the land of Israel. He will even get to see the city of Jericho, but never enter. And now we will continue our walk to the entrance of the monastery. But why is this mountain called the Mount of Temptation? The name is because of the temptation of Jesus. Two parts of it happened here. The first happened here in this part that we are seeing here on the side, which are the 40 days and 40 nights that Jesus will fast. And in the place where Jesus did his fast, monks began to live here since the Byzantine period. A way of life completely isolated from society. Come with me because I want to show you. We can see here that the mountain has dozens, if not hundreds of caves. And these monks begin to live inside these caves, and they live in a completely hermit way, isolated from the outside world. And the only connection they have with the world is among them on Sundays. They start to build stairs and connections. They start to gather on Sundays for collective prayers, and this system is called Loroth. And now what happens is that this Loroth system keeps growing, and it gives rise to the monastery, and that's why up here is the Monastery of Temptation. And also, according to Christian tradition, it was on this same mount where the third and final temptation of Jesus took place. Jesus travels back and forth between Galilee and Jerusalem many times, and as time goes by, Jesus' ministry grows, and he begins to live in the city of Jerusalem, which is the center of the people of Israel and where the Temple of Jerusalem was located. So Jesus would pass through Jericho on his travels back and forth between Galilee and Jerusalem. And as time goes by, Jesus' ministry grows and he becomes very well known. And he walks through the streets of Jericho, and the crowds follow him because everyone wants to see wants to know who this Jesus is. They want to talk to him. They want to make requests. And there was a man who really wanted to see Jesus, and this man's name is Zacchaeus. There's just one small problem, which the Bible itself tells us that Zacchaeus was short in stature, and in the midst of the crowd he couldn't see Jesus. So what does he do? He climbs up a tree, a sycamore tree, also known as a fig tree, and he climbs up this tree, looks at Jesus from above, and then Jesus says the following, "Zacchaeus, come down quickly, because today I must stay at your house." And Zacchaeus, hearing this, he comes down from the tree and he promises to give half of his goods to the poor. And also he says if he ever took something that did not belong to him, he would return it and return it fourfold, return 4 times more. Where is the tree that Zacchaeus climbed? According to local tradition, the locals say that this is the same tree that Zacchaeus climbed. And it is indeed very ancient, but we really don't know if it's the one or not. But one way or another, we can look at this tree and see what the sycamore, the wild fig tree that Zacchaeus climbed, looked like. I want to thank the Brazil Representation Office in Palestine and Ambassador Alessandro Candeias for all the support and for helping us turn these chapters in the Palestinian Authority into reality. And a special thank you to you who are watching us. Don't forget to leave that like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. A big kiss and see you next time.